Hi, everybody. That was a great conversation with Tapsi and Ruchi. Uh, to follow that forward, to take it forward, in fact, today now our panel is going to talk about executive presence. And we're going to take up executive presence as to how we see it. So let me start with a personal story of mine. I got my brush with executive presence pretty early in life, in my professional life. I start with a personal story on Spotify, which you can ask me to play. Sorry. So I started my presence, one of those glitches. Uh, Brush with executive presence when I was just straight out of B school. I started my career. I landed the job that I wanted to land as an investment banker. I was in Bombay 2001 in my early 20s. Here I land, and a large part of my job is to interact with what we in that generation called babus. I mean, for younger listeners, let me explain to you what babus. Let me draw a caricature for you. By babus, what I mean is people who were probably in government services necessarily, people who were working, who have been working for a good 20 years. They were in their mid 40s, and they were mostly maids. Interacting with them was very easy over the phone. My flow of work was such that I started interacting with them over the phone, and they were very receptive to my ideas. They were very happy. In fact, they really greatly valued the inputs that I was giving to them with respect to the markets. But the whole dynamic changed the moment I walked into their offices. In fact, to provide you a little bit of glimpse of how it looked like was there would be these large treasuries where I would walk in and I would be like a 24-year-old with my scrunched hair, my shirt tucked in into my trouser with my wedges. And there would most of the other people would be obviously, as I explained, and some women too. I mean, there were women even at that time during treasuries, but those would be all sari clad. A meeting that I have requested where I was expecting to close a deal, where I was expecting that, things are going to fall my way because I've already made the conversations, everything is in line. Kind of, I got dismissed out of those meetings. I was asked to leave. In fact, I was almost dismissed in 10 to 20 minutes, and the deals were not closing in. And as a young professional, I felt the sense of defeatism, definitely. And that's when I realized that, I need to make a change as much as it may be something I may not agree, something I may not, let's say, even agree to at that point of time. So my pants and shirts became saris, and my curly hairs were all straightened up. And believe me, it makes a difference. Straight hair makes you look much older for us women here. Yeah. So so from there on, I could see that I was disheartened. I spoke to people at work also. I was disheartened. I spoke to people at work, but I think I got a very interesting input. Even today, she's the head of Bank of America, Kapul Nakhate. She told me, by changing your appearance, what you get onto the table is change in your gravitas, and you bring gravitas to the table, and that is the need of the hour. So that's what, how I came across executive presence, and that's how I saw it. And now let's hear Geeta, hear her views. What is her take on what's executive presence?
Sorry, I was just trying to unmute myself. Thank you so much, Richa, for sharing that story. I think that brings home the points very, very strongly. I can quite relate to that time and that space. I could visualize myself in that room, this large brown table and huge chairs and all of that. So totally can relate with that. To me, really, executive presence is more about, I would say, courage and conviction. I think that is what, and it could be a very personal thing to me, but it really is about having a point of view for on something, having the conviction to state that point of view when it matters, having the poise to be calm in time of crisis. I think this is what gravitas and poise would mean for me. I would put it in two simple words: courage and conviction. Like this great Winston Churchill, I think, is known to have said that it takes courage to stand up and speak, but it also takes courage to sit down and listen. I think being able to discern when I need to speak, and when I need to stay calm, when I need to assert myself, and when I need to step back. I think for me, executive presence is about building gravitas through my personality, and courage and conviction is a critical part of that. So that's for me, Richa. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Geeta. I'm glad to have another banker on the table, so we can really
Yeah,
connect. Yeah,
we
we
should.
can really,
We should.
yeah, we can
Right.
really connect on this. Shilpa, what's your take on this?
So, good afternoon, everyone. Glad to be here with all of you. So, as a business strategy consultant and leadership advisor today, a lot of my work is with leaders. And that's where I use anecdotes and models and experiences from my own journey. And everything that I have seen, things which were good in terms of enhancing the executive presence and which took away, all that made me distill that into a model which is as easy as A, B, C, D, E. So, where A really stands for authenticity, where there needs to be complete alignment between your head, heart, and hands. You bring your whole self to the situation. The B really stands for body language, and that's what is commonly seen as the most known aspect when we talk about presence, executive presence or leadership presence, right? So, body language again can be verbal or non-verbal, and sometimes we learn that the hard way. It of course has to do with the appearance, sari versus trousers in a situation. It also has to do with confidence and your energy, which needs to be appropriate for a certain situation as well. So A for authenticity, B for body language, C really is connection, and that's where I see many times, us failing because of not showing up with courage. And that's where I think, communicating with empathy and courage both really adds to your overall presence, I would say. And D is very interesting. I work a lot with very senior leaders, and D is decisiveness. And if one thing really adds to your gravity, what people remember a lot about is the ability to consistently take decisions, especially in uncertain, difficult times. And haven't we had those in the last 2 years or so? So I think this is increasingly becoming an extremely important aspect of the overall idea of executive presence. And last but not the least is E, which really is expertise, comes from our education, comes from our experience, comes also from our emotional intelligence, how socially intelligent you are, how emotionally intelligent you are. So I think when we look at executive presence, a combination of the A, B, C, D, E is quite helpful in any given situation. And I see this model working quite well.
Thank you so much, Shilpa. I really appreciate you alphabetizing it. It makes it very even simple for us actually when we just think of it. And I completely agree with you that decisiveness is something which is not very spoken about, but making decisions and making them quick and fast most of the times actually kind of works and really adds to you as a leader, definitely. Ruchita, we would love to hear your views.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, everyone. Delight to be here. So I have to actually start with a story, Richard, much like what you spoke about your story, right? So for my first brush with executive presence was when I started out my first job, coincidentally in a bank, and I was immediately after joining, I was made to go through an etiquette training, right? And this was really where they were taught, teaching us about how to dress up, how to sit. They were teaching us how to, sit at a table, how to use a fork and a knife and everything. And I remember as a young, fresh of college, I was wondering, why is this important, right? I didn't do my MBA to come in to join a bank and have to learn this, right? But the takeaway from that really was, and that's something that stayed with me all these years. And I want to kind of really talk to the audience about this. That if you forget everything else, just remember this, which is dress for the job that you want, not for the job that you're in. And so that was my first brush with executive presence. And clearly for me, executive presence is everything that all three of you have said. But the way I try to kind of simplify this for myself is I believe in the power of three. So I kind of define it as gravitas, which is really knowing what you're knowing your stuff, being an expert. So the decisiveness, the kind of being an expert, all of that kind of comes into that. The second is communication. I think communication is just so powerful, and communication in these days is not just about verbal communication, it's about social communication, what we are doing on social media, what we are doing in writing, etc., right? Can you create communication that is compelling, it is convincing, it is concise. You're not being too verbose, because the attention span these days is 3 seconds. So can you create a communication that is not just compelling but concise, and can you communicate it in a confident manner? And the third piece, after gravitas and communication, is really professional image. And professional image, again, like what both Geeta and Shilpa and you spoke about, really it's about not just your physical appearance but your body language, your voice, etc. And here I'd like to kind of borrow from the Mehrabia model of effective communication. And I'm sure all of us, when we were first presented with that, really shocked us, right? That only 7% impact comes from what we are saying. 38% comes really from our voice, right? How do we use the tonality? How do we use pauses? How do we modulate it? And the balance 55% is, really the visual. So I think those are the three things that, I really believe go a long way in making a person's X factor come about, which is the executive presence, because executive presence is that X factor, right? That can help a person, be perceived as a leader. And that's the objective.
Thank you so much, Ruchita. I'm glad you spoke about the model because it's really true. I mean, the first time, I'm sure all of us have kind of at least read it or heard it, or one of those training programs we have been subjected to. We've heard about it, and it was indeed quite, at least on a personal note, it was quite shocking for me because I thought that my strengths were what training I was, bringing onto the table, how I have trained myself for the last 24 years, and those were the important things. So, another interesting, not interesting, I would say, another experience that I had and which kind of made me think about executive presence a little more deeply was in 2012. I quit my job and I became an entrepreneur. And I became an entrepreneur in tech. I was coming from a background of banking. I had done banking for 11 years, in fact, core treasury operations. And I thought my journey there was concluded and concluded well. And I wanted to move on and be an entrepreneur. And that was the time when, the tech boom was just about beginning up. To give all of you a sense of time, I mean, that was a time when there was no Amazon in India. That was a time when Flipkart was just starting up. So, at that time when I took the plunge, and in 2012-13, when I was doing my rounds with investors to raise funds, after bootstrapping for a year and we were doing reasonably well, and I, went ahead, and when I was doing these meetings, one question which got constantly bombed at me, maybe I was a little more sensitive to it, I would not rule that out, but one question that I constantly felt, whether asked or not asked, was first, you are a woman founder, and second, you are a woman founder in tech and you don't have a tech background. So, I felt the bias. I felt the bias on and on. This was a business that I had already established. This was a business that I was already running for a year plus. I have numbers to show, but people didn't want to look at that at that point of time. So one of these meetings, I got, I guess, I mean, I, I got pissed off, for lack of a better word, and I just went ahead and asked the person sitting right in front of me, whom I'm actually requesting to invest in my company. Yeah, I told him that, don't you think, I kind of pointed out the bias to him quite plain and simple. I really laid it out in simple words. Now, for me, it was a complex emotion because when I left that meeting, when I came out of that meeting, personally, I felt happy, I felt validated, I was happy making that decision for myself. But as days passed by and that investor didn't come back to me, I did start thinking about it. And Honestly, I started thinking about it even the same day when I started questioning that I did definitely did right by myself, but did I do right by my company? Did I do right for my startup? Right. So being in a society in India, and especially being a woman, we are constantly, we are constantly, even in fact, today's women are constantly asked to stand up, and probably our generation, or probably even a little generation behind us, probably I would say, were constantly asked to mold in. So that's my next question to all of you. What should we do? How should we balance this, this struggle between being genuine, or being honest to ourselves, or manage it in a way where it is profitable to our organizations? I
Richa, sorry, we
uh,
stopped hearing you.
oh, okay.
Okay, now we can hear you. Now we can hear you.
Okay, so let's start. Shilpa, would you like to go first on this?
So the question really is authenticity versus conformity, right, Richa? That
Absolutely,
I
absolutely.
ask, though authenticity is such a buzzword these days, but the world wants us still to conform, and that's what seems to be viable or profitable or advisable most of the times. I would say to each their own, but honestly, if you ask me, had you been inauthentic at that point in time, got the investment from this particular investor, what kind of relationship would you have had afterwards as well? So that's where I
I
say,
agree with you. Yeah, sorry, but
right.
I really agree with you on this. Yeah.
So sometimes I think the whole idea of authenticity is very good to really think deeply about. I work a lot with organizations and also with brands. So in the context of branding, we say what is considered an authentic brand. Very simply put, it is that what a brand says it will do, and the alignment between that and what that brand actually does. So that's authenticity in branding. We are all personal brands as well, right? So I think it is extremely important to first have clarity on what is authentic and go out with that presence to the world, right? And over a period of time, it's like a muscle. When we start feeling comfortable in our own skin, people around us will start getting it, that this is who she is, this is what she brings to the table. And that's where I think the whole idea of executive presence being authentic is so important. I'm not a believer in fake it till you make it, because the person who's in most stress, honestly, is you. You need to live with yourself and be answerable to your own self as well, right? So that's where I say that, you know start with busting some self-limiting belief, because it really starts with the fact that I'm not enough. The classic imposter syndrome, so many go through, especially women. Yeah, and then that's what already puts us at a situation of disadvantage, even when we get a seat at the table, or you are allowed entry into a room which is a room of privilege. So the idea there is not to start conforming, start becoming a fake person who you cannot live with, honestly. But the idea is to strengthen yourself from within so much that people start accepting you for who you are, and having that courage, as my co-panelists have been saying. I think that's the key word. Brené Brown is so on point when she uses that as the start to feeling vulnerable, and then getting more and more courage out of that vulnerability as well. So that would be my take. Not a fan of fake it till you make it, not a fan of conforming either, but really showing up as your authentic self and gaining respect for that.
Thank you so much, Shilpa. I wish I had known you in 2012. I would have definitely had a chat with you, and gained a lot of comfort from what you've told me right now. So, Ruchita, would you like to take it next?
Yeah, so just picking up from what Shilpa said, I'm also a firm believer of your personal brand. In fact, I encourage every person I meet, man or woman, to actually come up with their own tagline or borrow it from an existing brand. and make sure that you're keeping that tagline in mind and showing up as that consistently every point of time. Like, for example, I believe my tagline is impossible is nothing. So I try to kind of push the envelope and challenge status quo, etc. So I think that is a very, very good tip. Coming to your specific question on conformity versus authenticity, I think authenticity hands down. Absolutely. I think that is no doubt about it. Having said which, I think I would somewhere want to also suggest a little bit of a balance and being a little street smart about it, right? And kind of going back and picking up from what Geeta had said, right? Having the poise and the courage to knowing when to step back also. Because at the end of the day, we all work in a collaborative, in a large ecosystem, whether you're an entrepreneur or you're working for a company, right? There are other stakeholders at play, there are other powers at play. So yes, be your authentic self. So never step in and do something that is not you. But at the end of the day, also be smart. If you're in the game, then play the game well, is what I would say. So I'm not encouraging conformity, but I'm encouraging you to be really smart about making those choices. Decide which battles are worth fighting for, and decide which
Yeah.
battles are not worth fighting for. So I would actually say, absolutely authentic, but be very street smart. You don't get ahead in life without not being smart, right? Your attitude defines your altitude. Street smartness is also important, so just be a little mindful of that. Do it in an authentic way. You can be street smart, still be authentic, right? So that's what I would actually say. That I think that's the second thing. The third thing that I, for example, also have realized, that oftentimes I was faced with a decision or a choice where it was out of my comfort zone, it was out of my experiences, what they had taught me. But also being a little open and flexible, at least allowing yourself to think from the other's perspective, that listen, why would this pushback be coming to me? Have I prepared well enough? Am I presenting my case good enough? Have I done my job on influencing these stakeholders ahead of time? Or I'm just walking into it like a novice and saying that I can win this board meeting just because I believe I have worked hard and I have built up a business case which should get accepted by everybody else, right? You have to be a little flexible. You have to be open to taking feedback, because I'm sure there's a lot of learning that is also there with other people. So I think that's the other third element that I would say. So I'm sorry, it's not a straight yes or a no answer or a black and white answer. I think it's a little bit of a blend of everything.
It never is, actually. It's quite a complex question. But Geeta, your
Yeah.
thoughts, please.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you both, Ruchita and Shilpa, for your brilliant perspective on this. I would also agree that it's a fine balance and a deeply personal one at that. There is no taking away from the fact that every time you chip away something from your personality in order to fit in, you are weakening yourself, because you're taking away something from your personality, and that is a weak space. You are most authentic when you're strongest when you are most authentic. There is no doubt about that. Having said that, in a corporate world, there are many dynamics at play, and all of us start off our careers with great ambitions and starry-eyed and green behind the ear kind of demeanor, and we want to emulate other people. We want to fit into the larger ecosystem, look the part that we want to get to, and all of that. And in the process, we emulate a lot of bits and pieces of a lot of things that we pick up from the environment. And this, I'm talking from a very personal experience. It takes a long time. And unfortunately, for my young colleagues and friends who are listening to us, it may look like a long journey, because I have spent almost 29 years in the industry. So, it has been a long journey. As you grow older, you collect life experiences and all of that. You slowly develop, I think, courage, confidence to peel off some of these layers, to adopt or embrace the more authentic self of you. All of us come up thinking that you need to be this, out there, extrovert kind of a person, and that kind of personality wins in an organizational context. Okay. And you kind of are out there being the life of parties, or in conference rooms being the first voice and the last voice to end, and all of that. At some point you realize, maybe that is not me, right? Maybe I don't have to be the last voice in the room. Maybe I don't have to be the first voice in the room. Maybe I don't need to be here at all. And I'm okay with accepting some parts of me. And as I start to become more confidence with my own successes, with my life experiences, with a lot of failures as well, because that teaches you more than any success can ever teach you. When this shapes you, you start peeling away the layers and you become okay with embracing you yourself as you are. In fact, you start becoming more you as you grow and age and learn and all of that. And I'm not for a minute connecting this with age. It is how fast you learn. You can be living to 70 and not learn anything, and not be any wiser for that. And you can be 25 and really wise. So I'm not for a minute taking age as a caveat here, but how reflective you are about yourself, how fast you learn, and how fast you embrace yourself. I think you start to become more and more authentic as you go along. And as you embrace your own authenticity, people around you start seeing you as a personality that is definingly you. And then you become comfortable in your skin. And then conformity is not a, I would say, choice at all, because you don't want to be anybody else. You want to be you, and the world around you starts to accept you as you are, because that's your best self. So I think it's a deeply personal journey, but a beautiful journey of growth. And and we are all in it, I would say, somewhere in the continuum. So that's a small
Absolutely.
bit for me. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Geeta. I mean, so much experience coming in our way here in form of this panel. I hope audience is listening in. I have really, truly enjoyed interacting with all of you. I'm going to just take the liberty and ask a last quiz. Anybody who wants to answer can answer. And I would also like the audience to kind of participate. So any one of you. So assume you are in a store and you're picking up a product. It could be a grocery store, it could be a shoe store, it could be a clothes store, whichever store comes to your mind. Which product will you pick up for executive presence? Anybody who wants to start, take this.
Bright lipstick.
I was going to say that a bright.
I'm the only one not wearing one. Oh, shucks. Yeah. So on this
Yeah.
note, I think thank you. Anybody else?
I was going to say high heels.
High heels. See
Yes.
my wedges. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you so much. I had a great time with all of you, and
Thank you.
hope to see you all soon.
It was a pleasure.